a life of happiness and joy. And we've used the book, The Living the Science of Mind, which helped us create this pathway of living in peace, fulfillment, and happiness, and consciously connecting to the life force that we call God or Spirit. Now, these writings, they don't promise us a life with no hills and valleys in our human experience, and we don't deny conditions. That's important to remember. We don't deny the conditions show up. What we deny is that these conditions have any power over us, because they do not. They only have the power that we give them. So following our work last week, we're going to continue to break free from the bonds of yesterday to live fully today and in all of our tomorrows. And this week, my talk is inspired by the chapter that begins on page 215, Principle and Precedent in our Living the Science of Mind. Through a four-step process offered by Holmes in this chapter, we're going to firmly fix our consciousness. Remember the 8 elements of consciousness I explored the first Sunday? That principle is never bound by precedent, and that we can create new ways of living in peace, fulfillment, and happiness right here and right now. But before we get to that, I want to put the finishing touches on last week's work. So last week, you all wrote down the things that you wanted to release so that you were no longer being bound by it. You brought it up to the altar and you laid a tea candle on top. And you left it there saying, all the power of the universe conspires to support me in releasing the past and building a beautiful tomorrow today. You all were here for that. The ones that were here, you remember that, right? Well, I gathered up all the papers, and while I did not read them, I did a prayer for release over them, just to give them a little extra boost in case there was something stubborn that just didn't want to be released. And then I wondered what to do with them all, and it occurred to me that a powerful way to release these is to burn them. We have done a burning bowl here in the past, and we symbolized that last week when we placed the flames on top of them. But to really burn all the papers would be more powerful, I think. It also occurred to me that the fire marshal probably wouldn't be too happy on me burning all these sheets that are here. So I had an idea. What if I could condense it all down to just one piece of paper and then just burn that? That would probably work, right? So here's what I've done. I brought in a pouch. You can see it is empty to put all of our stuff in. And in this pouch, I'm going to wave my magic wand over it in a minute. And I'm going to make all these papers disappear, hopefully. And hopefully what's going to remain is one little piece of paper that will burn. So I brought my magic wand. I love it. Okay, so in a moment I'm going to say abracadabra, and I have to tell you before I do that, if anybody here knows what abracadabra really means, well, it comes from the Aramaic phrase meaning I create like the word. Or perhaps it has its origins in the Hebrew phrase meaning I will create as spoken. Sound familiar? And you thought it was just magician mumbo jumbo. So here we are now, ready to create as spoken. So on the count of 3, everybody can say abracadabra with me. 1, 2, 3. Abracadabra. Okay, let's see what's left. 1 sheet. How did she do that? And we're going to burn it. So now everything is released. So now that we've done that, we can build on that work. with our topic today, which is principle is not bound by precedent. The sentence, principle is not bound by precedent, was originally spoken by who, Susie?
My favorite boyfriend, Thomas True.
Thomas Troward, and recorded in his book, The Edinburgh Lectures, which is, as his name says, a compilation of lectures he gave in Edinburgh. What is principle here? In our textbook on page 221, Holmes writes, principle is the power that made everything. It is absolute. It will not and cannot be denied, end quote. So principle is not bound by precedent means that God is not limited to what has occurred before. God is creating anew all the time. Likewise, we are not limited to what has gone on before, as we explored in depth last Sunday. However, we must, to quote Dr. Holmes in Living the Science of Mind, on page 216, he writes this, quote, we must create new avenues in our minds for a fresh approach and a new outlook to spirit. This is something that each of us must do for ourselves, but there must be a method or a way to begin, end quote. And then he gives us 4 steps, 4 ways of being really that will help us live the truth that principle is not bound by precedent. And these 4 ways of being take all we have worked with this month and put them into these beautiful, powerful steps. So let's see what they are. So number 1 is realize what we're dealing with. And we find these empowering words on page 216 of Living the Science of Mind. And here's what he says, quote, we should start with a firm conviction that we are dealing with a power which is not bound. It is not limited. It is not only some power, it is all power, end quote. Christian Larson wrote in Pathways of the Roses on page 14, quote, the universe is orderly from center to circumference, and everything is established upon the firm foundation of eternal right and universal good. I love that. Eternal right and universal good. There is a power that lives and moves throughout this vast immensity, and all those things that have a permanent place in the cosmos or that are instrumental in any way in promoting the purpose of life have their source in this one power. All the laws and forces in existence spring originally from this power. It is therefore the center and source of all that lives and moves, and this power is the power of God, end quote. I mean, I could go home now, that really does say it all. I mean, it does. When we think about that, we don't really think about that often. Wayne Dyer related how he went from being an agnostic who seriously questioned the existence of God to an absolute believer in a divine intelligence in back of all things. This example cleared it all up for him. Imagine, if you will, a junkyard filled with millions of pieces of random junk. Wires strewn about, bits of metal, tires, fabric, foam, electrical machinery, screws, nuts, bolts, glass, fragments of porcelain, and everything else you can imagine lying around haphazardly. Suddenly, a gigantic wind blows through this messy junkyard, and the pieces of junk are thrown in the air, colliding with each other, flying and crashing here and there, and just as suddenly, the force of wind subsides, and there in the junkyard, where millions of pieces of trash had previously been, is a jumbo jet Boeing 747, all ready to fly. By happenstance, luck, a weird coincidence, all the parts were pieced together to make a perfect jet aircraft out of the millions of pieces of debris. From random to rubbish to precise perfection by accident? I don't think so. Dyer writes in his There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem on page 201, quote, "This is an intelligent system that we are all a part of. There is a force, a power, a consciousness that created and supports this system. That force is omnipresent and therefore it is in you. Your body is a part of this system, and it is also a system of perfectly coordinated parts itself. While it may appear random and unintelligent, it is the height of arrogance and naivety to assume it is accidental. It is just as unlikely for the wind to accidentally blow together several million pieces of debris and create a 747 jumbo jet as it is for a force to accidentally arrange this intelligent system that we are all a part of, which has billions of moving parts. That simple little story opened me to knowing that there is an intelligence called by many names, but essentially comprised of cooperation, harmony, peace, flow, or love that is the source of all," end quote. We lost a great light last year when Wayne left this plane, didn't we? There is a power. There is all the power behind all that is. Holmes says this is our first step in having the truth statement principle is not bound by precedent become a living reality in our lives. Number 2, realize that we have access to this power. It's not reserved for a chosen few. In Living the Science of Mind on page 216, he says, quote, "Next, we must assure ourselves that we have access to this power. We could never do this if we felt that the power was external to us. If it were something apart from or different from our own being, we discover that God is immediate and personal, a possibility latent within the self, but ready to be called upon and used," end quote. You know, we really don't believe this. And yet we watch all these people on television. People pay thousands of dollars to go to these spiritual workshops to hear people saying exactly what I'm saying here every Sunday. So there's some truth to it for some people. There should be truth to it for all people, because we're all created exactly the same. Exactly the same. Out of the one comes the multiplicity of form, but there's only one. Number 3, not only realize that we have access to it, but identify with it. That's where I think we lose it. So on page 217 of Living the Science of Mind, he writes, quote, "Our next step is to identify the self with this power. I am that which thou art. Thou art that which I am. We are one with this power in it, with it, and some part of it," end quote. In 1893, Swami Vivekananda, a Hindu master, arrived in Chicago. It was a big deal. As a matter of fact, what was his name? Do you remember him? David, I have his book at home. I have to think about it. Came to our community. He had written a book about the original yoga master, and it was about Vivekananda. And he came to speak at the first World Parliament of Religions, which was in Chicago. He was the first Hindu ever to address the American public. And what he said was shocking to many. In fact, he was regarded by many as a heinous blasphemer because of his message. So what did he say? Well, Vivekananda told a story which I've shared before. I used a tiger, he used a lion. A lion who had been raised by a flock of sheep, and naturally thought he was one of them. Another lion tried to convince him that he wasn't a sheep at all, but to no avail, until the lion was taken to a pool and shown his reflection in the water. Yogananda told the audience, and you, my friends, are the lions. You are pure, infinite, and perfect souls. He for whom you have been weeping and praying in churches and temples is your own self. Remember the affirmation we used a couple of weeks ago. The power within me is the power of God, and this power is my divine authority to create. So let's say it again. This power within me is the power of God. This power within me is the power of God. And this power is my divine authority to create. And this power is my divine authority to create. So we're going to anchor this in step 3. The power within me is the power of God, and this power is my divine authority to create. So number 4 is, after we access and identify with it, we must consciously increase our expectation and deepen our realization of it by using it. It doesn't do us any good to have a combination lock if we never use the combination to get into it. You know, when The Secret came out, millions of people were running to see The Secret, which never really told you the secret. I'm telling you the secret every Sunday. And we're not using it. So there was this temporary Sunday school teacher struggling to open a combination lock on the supply cabinet. She'd been told the combination, but she couldn't remember it. She went to the pastor's study and asked for help. The pastor came into the room and began to turn the dial. And after the first 2 numbers, he paused. He stared blankly for a moment. Finally, he looked serenely heavenward with his lips moving silently. Then he looked back to the lock and quickly turned to the final numbers and opened it. The teacher was amazed. I always stand in awe of the power of prayer, minister, she said. As do I, he said, but this time the numbers are on a piece of paper taped to the ceiling. So here again is the method that Holmes lays out for us to live from a place of knowing and experiencing that principle is now found by precedent. So 1, realize what you're dealing with, the all-power. 2, realize that you have access to the power. It's not reserved for a chosen few. Number 3, not only realize you have access to it, but identify with it. And number 4, after we access and identify it, consciously increase our expectation and deepen our realization of it by meditation, communing with the divine, and using it. So just think for a moment right now how it is that you could use this combination in your life today. I always want us to make what we do practical and useful in our lives. So if you're willing to do that right now, I'll give you a few moments to think about a current situation in your life and just apply these steps and write them down. Larry, we have some blank paper in the community box that I brought, our box. I'm sorry, I should have left it down. I'm throwing it back in there. And so think about that. I'm going to put some nice music on for you to give it a few minutes to think about and write something down. The 4th step is, after we access and identify with it, consciously increase our expectation and deepen our realization through meditation, communing with the divine. Now, a song you all probably never heard before. find these steps to your issue or challenge that you're, or really anything, something you want to create in your life. Another couple of seconds. Maybe you don't finish now, you can finish it all. So I'm going to close this out with a prayer. So from deep within my being, I recognize for myself and for everyone present that the power for good that breathes as us, that pumps our blood Honolulu godly, able to tap into this power for good and use it in our lives. When we really, truly believe that this is so, it is so. It becomes the law and the source of our lives. And it allows us to move forward in grace and ease in any situation. I take to heart today these ideas of our founder, Dr. Holmes, and I apply them moving forward to every situation that shows up. I am not attached to any outcome, for I trust the process and I trust the universe, that whatever unfolds in my experience is for me and never against me. So I commit today to myself that I will take these ideas home. I will look at the situation that I know I can apply them to, and I indeed commit to applying these ideas and moving this situation along the path for good and more good unfolding. With a grateful heart, I release my word. I place it into the law of creation, allowing it to bring forth perfect unfolding for me right here and right now. And so it is. Inside of our program is our prosperity affirmation, and as we